Hi, my name is Jerry. Online I'm known as JerryPH from accordionmemories.com. Welcome to Roland FR-8X Mild to Wild. Hi there. I'm going to start off this video right off the bat with a bit of an apology. The last video came out a little over a year ago, and life's been throwing me a lot of challenges. So that kind of put me in a position where I was unable to continue the video series, but we're back. And with that, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be touching on in this video. In this video, we'll be concentrating primarily on two sections of the accordion controls specifically. These sections are section number 10, which is the left-hand sound controls, and section 11, the right-hand sound controls. Before we jump in, there is something I'd like to discuss before we move on, and that has something to do with the charging on the V-accordion. The FR-8X has the ability to recharge a dead battery and to be used at the same time by connecting it into an AC adapter. We then turn on the accordion and let it boot, becoming into its natural playing state, after which we hit and hold the charge button. At this point, we are effectively both in a playable state and charging the battery at the same time. However, I would like to highly discourage anyone do this. It is known that the accordion can overheat the circuitry, causing damage. So, either play your accordion on AC power or the battery, but do not play the accordion and charge the battery at the same time. You can damage your accordion, and there are instances where this has known to happen. To help you avoid any possible issues or problems, and to know the status of your accordion, in the top right hand side of your menu, you'll always have this charging status. The available icons in that corner are when the FR-8X is being powered by the adapter, when the FR-8X is being powered by the battery pack, and it also shows you a full charge, when the accordion is being powered by the battery pack and the charge is yellow, you should try to recharge this at your earliest convenience. If you see the little battery indicator being red, charge it as soon as possible. The bottom one is the battery pack is being charged. Now, be very careful. Again, do not put the accordion into a playing mode while you're charging the battery. The damage is real. It has happened in the past. Use at your own risk. All right, let's move on to the fun stuff. For the sake of the benefit of this video, what I've done is I've laid the accordion on its back and placed it sideways, and I put one camera facing the menu system and the other facing the keyboard button area, or the main control area of the keyboard, if you will. One of the first things we need to do is, first of all, let's turn it on. We'll wait for it to boot up. And now that it's booted, we're ready to play. Almost. Don't forget, this accordion needs bellows movement. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it up to give us a certain level of sound so that we can hear it without me needing to wear it. And we do that by going into the menu system, going to the appropriate section, and finding out where we need to have the settings placed for us so that when I accept it and then exit the menuing system, we're ready to play. right now, we're ready to just have a little bit of fun with it. So from here, I can tell that if I start playing, it's working for us. So at this point, we're ready to start the demonstration. Let's move on to the next section where we talk about what we are going to be showing you in this video. Before diving in, let's take a look at the actual menu or the display on the 8X. As we can tell, it's divided off into several sections. Let's start off with a part that we already should be up to date on, and that's the top right hand side, the battery level power or the source indicator. Right underneath that, we have the right hand tones field. Those are separated off into the Orchestra 1, Orchestra 2, and the accordion section. In each section, you can see the tones chosen for each section. In the left hand tone field, we again see something similar. This section is divided off into three parts as well: the bass and chord registration and section, the orchestra bass tone selection, and the orchestra chord selection. In the keyboard mode area, we see the current configuration of the keyboard mode, whether it's in zone mode, high, or low, as indicated. Finally, at the top left-hand side of our display, we have, from the top down, the name of the MP3 or WAV file that we've selected to play as a backing track, and the name of the current set or user program that we have selected. With this information, we are now ready to move on to the next section. Let's start off by taking a look at the right hand portion, a series of buttons, and here we can see exactly where they're located on the front control center of the accordion. The four sections that are controlled by this area are the accordion sounds, the organ sounds, and the orchestral sounds, divided off as Orc 1 and Orc 2. Pressing any one of these buttons will bring up the sounds and tones associated with this section. For example, by pressing the accordion 1 section, we bring up all sounds associated with the accordion. Same thing with the organ. Same thing for the individual orchestral buttons. Right about now, most of you are about one step ahead of me and are probably going to ask me something like, can I use more than one button at a time? The answer to that is yes. And this concept is called layering. Layering is a methodology by which I can add more than one sound at a time. For example, if I would want an accordion and organ at the same time, I would press the accordion and organ buttons at the same time. I can also mix them up, for example, accordion, orchestra 1, orchestra 2. Now, the next thing that I would like to make you aware of is, although we can have as many combinations of these that we want, there is one limitation. We can use up to a maximum of 3 layers in any combination that we want, except the organ section and the orchestra section cannot be used at the same time. The reason behind that is because Roland, for some reason, decided that they're going to be using the same effects engine for the organ section and the orchestra 1 section. Don't ask me why they did that. This is something I do not know. That said, the possible options for us are accordion plus organ, accordion plus orchestra 1, accordion plus orchestra 2, accordion, organ, and orchestra 2, accordion, orchestra 1 and orchestra 2, orchestra 1 and 2 together, and finally orchestra 2 and organ. The functionality for the left hand is a little bit different than the right hand. Instead of us having 4 separate sections, The left hand is divided off into two sections. The first section is on the right, and it's called the section associated with the bass and chord and the free bass. The second section is the orchestral chord / free bass and the orchestral bass, and their functionality is a little bit different. When the bass and chord button is activated, your left hand sounds like an ordinary accordion, and therefore any registers that we change on the left side will affect only the accordion sounds. Hitting the free bass button, or the F.bass button, the first thing that happens is the bass and chord button is deactivated. The second thing that happens is that the bottom 4 rows of the accordion, traditionally reserved for the diminished 7th major and minor chords, are converted into individual notes in the free bass design that you choose in your system. Sort of like hitting the converter button on most free bass accordions with this feature. Clicking on the orchestral chord / free bass button does one of two things, and it depends on whether the bass and chord button is activated or the free bass button is activated. With the bass and chord button, when it is activated in conjunction with the orchestral chord / F-bass button, it changes the sounds of your chords from accordion chords to orchestral instruments. And if you have the free bass button activated, it changes the sounds of your free bass buttons to orchestral instruments. In this configuration, if you happen to hit the first top 2 rows of your accordion bass buttons, you will see that they sound like an ordinary accordion at this point. Clicking the orchestral bass button will convert your top 2 rows to an orchestral instrument. So for example, we could have things like guitars, bass, tuba, bass guitars, etc. assigned to your orchestral bass sounds. Again, some of you might be asking, are there any kinds of combinations that we can do with this setup? Yes, you can. Let's go through those options. Now, obviously, when I use just an accordion sound, I can have that, or I can have an orchestral instrument. But over and above that, I can set up the bass rows to be accordion plus orchestra and leave the accordion just like that on the chord rows. I can inverse this by saying on the bass row I just want the accordion, and on the chords I want accordion and orchestra. Or I can have accordion and orchestra sounds happen on both the bass and the chord rows. Now obviously I can have an accordion sound when I have the free bass option selected, or I can have an orchestral sound coming out of the free bass notes, which are reassigned when I click on the free bass button. Okay, enough theory. Let's go see how this works with very basic, easy to understand examples in real life. All right, let's take a look at that real life example. As you can see, we're back here with the accordion turned on. I set it up so that it has a minimal amount of volume coming out of it. And I have the 2 cameras set up, one to show us the menu, any changes we do there, and from the front here in terms of any buttons that we will be hitting. So when I turn on the accordion, in its default setup, it comes on with the accordion setup in the bass and chord. So on here, it chooses the right hand of the accordion, and the left hand is going to have our accordion notes. Okay, so let's start off with the right hand. So I've just pressed the accordion, didn't have to, but it was already there. And as you can tell, it's ready and playing for us. Okay. If I want to change to an organ, I hit the organ button and if I wanted to go to the orchestral sounds, I would click the Orchestra 1 button. Same thing for the Orchestra 2. Now the oddest thing in the world is to try to play my accordion sideways. It's like asking a piano player to play the accordion the right way up. It's not comfortable. Okay? So I'm going to go and just go back to the accordion here. We all know that if I wanted to change the registration, I would go to any one of these 14 register buttons here. That's the standard one. I know if I hit the first one, if we take a look on the menu, we'll see that there are some changes being shown, and so on and so forth. We can do the same thing with the organ, because if I come back here and go to Master, go back to the organ, let's go hit the first one. Hit number 2, hit register number 3. So here's something I want to show you. When I want to go to the accordion and I hit a register button, I hit that same register again, I get the same registration. When I go to the organ, let's say I choose number 8, just out of randomness. Hit 8 again. It has actually 2 sets of sounds for every register. So we don't have 14 sounds right here available to us, we have 28. So let's go just to number 1. Hit number 1 again. Number 2. Number 2 again. So there's a lot of changes for us. This also extends into the orchestral sounds. For example, Orchestra 1, I go hit number 8. Hit number 8 again. So we have that same effect here. Let's go to number 1. Number 1 again. So it has a lot of different kinds of sounds for us. If I go back to number 3 here, 3 again. So we see we have a lot of different ways of accessing all these orchestral sounds. Same thing for orc number 2. Let's go to number 8. Number 8 again. Randomly, just choose number 4. Number 4 again. So we now see that there are several ways for us to choose all of these different sounds. Here's what's the interesting thing for us. If I wanted to play an accordion and I wanted to have a bit of a musette sound. Whoops, that's not a musette sound. Is that a musette sound? No, let's take a look at it. Oh, it doesn't matter. We'll choose any one of these sounds. It doesn't matter. Okay, close enough for a bit of a musette sound. And let's say I wanted to have an organ, but I wanted to play them both at the same time. I would hit the accordion and the organ numbers at the same time. As mentioned, this concept of putting 2 sounds on top of each other is called layering. And when we do that, we get and we can do that with the accordion. And let's choose a bit of a sound here. Okay, this organ and this accordion. And they're chosen all together for us. Now I'm going to go to orchestra number 1. Let's listen to that. Let's choose something else. Yeah. And then we'll go to accordion, and let's just choose orchestra and accordion. So we see now how certain things can happen. And we can do a lot of these. I can play accordion, organ, orchestra 2, orchestra 1 all alone. I can do accordion and organ. I can do accordion and orchestra 1. I can do accordion and orchestra 2. Accordion, organ, and orchestra 2. Let's just try that for the fun of it. Accordion, organ, and orchestra 2. So I just press these 3 buttons at the same time and I got... Very cool. What's the one thing that we cannot do? Do you guys remember? That's the organ and orchestra 1. So the organ and orchestra 1 will not work. I can't get them. It's one or the other. Or I can put orchestra 1 and 2 together. I can put orchestra and organ. I can put... I cannot do organ, accordion, orchestra 1 because that involves the organ 1. But I can do organ, orchestra 2, and orchestra 1. So I can have these 3 layers. Lots of different ways for us to come out and play with different sounds. So that's the thing that's really interesting for us. Now, here it is. We've got all these possibilities. We've got 28 sounds here, 28 sounds in this one, 28 sounds available to us here. We have 14 accordion sounds available to us. But we only have one set of buttons that can control which registrations we want. How do I know that when I do this and I hit this, that I'm going to be changing, for example, if I wanted to change my accordion sound. So if I have my organ and I want to leave that sound, but I wanted to have my change to a master, how do I select it? Here's the trick. Depending on what button you hit last, the button you hit last is the one that will control your registrations. So if I want the accordion to be the one that I change, I'll hit organ first, then the accordion. I'll get my sound that I want. And when I hit the master, for example, number 8, I should get the master on the accordion and the organ should stay the same. And that's exactly what's happened. So what happened if I wanted to change the organ sound but keep the accordion? Let's go back to, let's say, another higher pitch for the accordion. So now we have an organ and clarinet. I want the organ sound to change. Hit the accordion button first, hit the organ second, so that when I change, it is the organ sound that is changing. That's the secret. So we can layer, but if I wanted to have the accordion is the one that I want to change and I want these to be the same, 1, 2, 3, I will hit the accordion button the last and I hit the buttons, the orc 2 button last. Got to be careful with that. 1, 2, 3. That's definitely what's been happening. Got to be careful with that. So even you saw me do a little mistake here because my accordion's sideways. I'm not used to playing it sideways. So as we're demoing this section here, we see that this is a great way to access these sounds that we want in different manners. So right now we have all these sounds available to us. We know now how to change them individually. And we learned about the concept of layering. There is, again, I'm going to repeat this just for 1 second, the final time. The one limitation that we have is that we cannot play the organ and orchestra 1 together. The reason for that, what I found, is because they seem to be using the same effects engine internally. So that means that I can't use these two at the same time. It's not a great limitation. We have thousands of instruments available to us here, more than I'll ever use. The possibilities are endless. But we now know how to work this section here. Let's go move on to the next section, which is the left hand. Let's start off by repeating that the left-hand section in terms of functionality is divided off into two sections. That's the two buttons, the bass and chord and free bass buttons, that's one portion, and the orchestra chord / F bass or free bass, and orchestral bass. If I hit just the bass and chord button, which is the default when it turns on, you have a standard accordion on the right hand. And you can play chords, major, minor, seventh, diminished, in all the keys, okay? And what happens when I press the registers, you can hear that the registers change. What happens when I press the free bass row, it changes not the top two rows, they stay the same. The other rows are the ones that change. That's the major, minor, seventh, and diminished buttons, now changing to individual notes. So what happens now is I have an instrument with multiple octave of single notes. In a chromatic format. When I put this back into the bass and chord choice, notice I cannot do both of these. It will not let me do that. It's either one or the other. When I press both of them, nothing happens. It stays where it was. So let's settle on the bass and chord version and go back to our standard accordion bass. If I happen to hit the orchestral chord / free bass button, what happens is our chords change, as mentioned, from accordion to instrumentals or orchestral sounds. So the accordion part stays the same. What changes is the chords. Now, if I was to just go back to the accordion portion by itself and disconnect or disable the accordion free bass, turn it off by pressing it once more time, and just clicking the free bass, and we go back to our basic free bass mode. By hitting the orchestral chord / free bass, we enable the free bass notes now to turn into orchestral notes. Let's go back to straight accordion. That means just the bass and chord button is depressed. You remember that if I pressed the accordion chord free bass, I had orchestral chords. What would happen if I pressed the orchestra bass button at this point? At that point, it would change my accordion notes to orchestral bass notes. So now I have now we can layer these. You saw me do individual accordion, bass and chords. You saw me do accordion bass with accordion chords, and then orchestral chords, excuse me. And then you saw me do orchestral bass. Now, if I just did orchestral bass and chord, what happens is I can set it up that I have orchestral bass, but accordion chords. So the orchestral bass decides which other I want, if I want orchestral bass or not. more orchestral chords. And then, of course, we can layer them all together if we want. By lighting up the bass and chord, orchestral chord / freebass, and orchestral bass buttons. And again, whichever menu we hit last, that is the one that we're going to be able to control with our registration here, okay? Same thing happens there, like on the right hand. And that's about the end of the section explaining the functionality of the bass.
One, two, three, whoa!